Welcome to Tossing Grenade the Windmills. Windmills.
Frank woke up with a headache. He immediately looked around and saw that he was in a hospital bed, wearing a hospital gown. A quick inventory told him that he had no holes in him. He saw that the pouch was at the foot of the bed, but that all of his other gear was missing. It was probably in the pouch. It had a way of following him around. He unhooked the IV from his arm. Did that count as a hole? Then slowly slipped out of bed. Nothing was broken. Thus, he once again proved that good was indestructible. He reached into the bag and pulled out his uniform. They had been kind enough to put it into the magic bag. Bit by bit he put on his costume and armed himself with a wide assortment of grenades. There was a great deal to do. He carefully checked the door, and there seemed to be a guard waiting outside. He checked the window, and found that there was no guard there. Not unless the pigeon on the window-sill was, in fact, a secret government robot. He didn't think they had that kind of cybernetics. In fact, in most ways, they were remarkably primitive here. He tried to open the window but found it stuck. Not concerned in the least, he pulled a small sprayer from his utility belt. A few sprays later, and the window had been reduced to a melted puddle of slag and goo. The wood-like substance had charred, but the glass melted like snow. Taking out his grapple gun, he shot it out and up toward the roof. The engine bore his weight, and suddenly he was flying through the air. Upon landing on the roof, he took stock of the town. It was very small, but it was not surrounded by government tanks and military personnel. That meant he probably hadn't been here very long. On with saving the world. Project Omega was nearly complete, but Grenademan would take no chances that things might get out of hand while he was looking for them. He ran and leapt off the building and onto someone's car below. He crashed through the roof and got stuck in the canvas instead of bouncing beyond the parking lot. Obviously, the car was in league with the forces of evil. With several sprays of the acid sprayer, he did to the car what he had done to the window. By the time he was done, all that was left was the tires and some of the rubber components from inside the engine. He leapt toward the fence and the trees waiting beyond it. The naked driver was speechless with gratitude at his rescue. Michelle woke up with a headache. She was in bed and almost naked. It was not necessarily that unusual, but she was also wearing a pair of men's boxers. She vaguely had a memory of kissing Kevin and suddenly felt ashamed. What had she been thinking? She felt nasty. She was pretty sure it hadn't been rape, but it hadn't exactly been the cleanest of things either. She remembered the look that Kevin had given her. He hadn't been respecting her very much, but if she felt he had contempt for her, why had she been attracted to him in the first place? She vaguely remembered something about saving the world, but now that she thought about it, it was probably a pickup line. The phone rang, and it sounded like a dump truck full of Liberty Bells had crashed just down the street. She picked it up only to make the demonic thing stop making that unholy sound. She vaguely heard someone say something on the other end, so she slowly, carefully moved the phone toward her mouth. "Hello."
You sound terrible.
It was Beads. How to make this conversation short? "It's nothing. What is it?"
He's on the loose. He just got out of his hospital room. He was looking for you, not in that order.
Who?
Grenademan.
That vaguely penetrated Michelle's headache. Grenademan was looking for her? Why? Beads sighed.
I don't know why. Why does he do any of the things he does? We don't have any idea, but we do know we barely stopped one of the locals who isn't in the circle from turning him in for a reward last night. Now he's up and about, and apparently he was looking for you. Kevin thinks he was trying to find the four of us again, which makes sense, I guess. He probably thought of tracking us through you, which is a problem because that probably means Jarvi is going to do the same thing.
Okay.
So, for now, we just want you to stay at home. You're excused from working today. Cecil will be nearby if you need him.
Okay.
Are you sure you're fine?
Yes. She hung up the phone and lay back down on the bed. Grenademan was to be blessed at the moment, because he had managed to keep her from having to go back to work. She wanted to sleep for several more hours, but suddenly felt very sick. She moved to the toilet and threw up for several minutes before she crawled back into bed. As she stared at the ceiling, she wondered in the back of her mind what Marv was doing right then. Was he staring up at the gray, pallid ceiling of his Guantanamo cell? Was he thinking about her at this moment? Was he thinking that she was a cheap, slutty whore who slept with the first guy that treated her with contempt? She cried herself to sleep. She awoke to something gently tapping her foot. At first she thought it was the cat, but the cat didn't wear spiked chainmail. That hurt. Ow! She opened her eyes and saw Grenademan politely wave at her. Hello.
Greetings, Michelle Kazoktok. I am seeking your good friend, Doc. Do you know where I might find him?
Ow. The headache had gone away, but it was coming back again really fast.
Are you in pain?
Stop that. She was giving herself more of a headache by yelling at him. Please stop yelling.
Is this better?
A little, she whispered, trying to make the pain go away. She began to stumble out of bed until she realized that she had never dressed. She was barely able to manage an eep before she immediately crawled back under the covers.
Terribly sorry. You have yet to don your citizen's garb. I shall wait outside.
He stepped outside her bedroom door. At least he wasn't a total jerk. She literally crawled out of bed and moved toward the bathroom. Pulling herself slowly up off the tile and over the sink, she saw her face. She looked horrible. Her hair was a mess, her skin was gaunt, and she realized, to her absolute disgust, that a tiny bit of vomit had hardened on her chin. Barely able to contain the cringes of awfulness creeping across her flesh, she reached for a washcloth and wiped away the vomit. She took a hot shower. She wasn't sure how long she was in there, but it felt nice and helped her wake up a little and figure out what to do. She was probably supposed to call Cecil right away, but Cecil was kind of a jerk. She had a few questions for this guy anyway, and she felt that she had earned an answer. She put on a t-shirt and a pair of jeans, then opened the door. Thanks for waiting.
It was an honor, citizen.
She smiled. Call me Michelle. He nodded.
It is an honor to meet you, Citizen Michelle.
This was going to be an interesting conversation. Why do you yell all the time?
This isn't yelling.
Yes, it is. Please stop that. I have a hangover.
I am merely speaking in the valiant voice of a superhero.
Didn't you say you would stop? She put her hands over her ears.
Yes, I forget that everyone in this world has super hearing.
He also enunciated the words very slowly, so that she could hear them, even if she had her hands over her ears. Of course, that didn't stop her from hearing him. You say other world. That means you're not from this world?
That is correct, Citizen Michelle. I have been moved across the worlds because I stopped Dimensional Anomaly from destroying my world. I have been trying to return to my home and have made arrangements with Order to be returned if I fight Chaos for her in this world. As such, while I have moved to help this world as best I could, I have been forced to keep Citizen Kevin, Citizen Doc, Citizen Beads, and Citizen Oscar alive as long as possible. Unfortunately, the inhabitants of this world seem determined to get themselves killed.
Well, that was interesting. So he had a personal stake in all of this after all. I know where they are, but Oscar is at Guantanamo Bay. Doc, Beads, and Kevin are here in town. They've been working with others to make the town safe for when the zombies attack.
I see. Why is Oscar at Guantanamo Bay?
Grenademan looked concerned. He helped us find out what the government would do if we told them. We had thought we might work with them, but Marv volunteered to say he knew something, and they locked him up.
Normally, I believe in cooperating with the authorities, but in addition to denying the obvious and their superhearing, people in this reality seem to want to stop anyone else from trying to do anything to help them.
Grenademan began to pace. Well, we're strange that way, I guess. She smiled. Have you had anything to eat? Grenademan's stomach growled.
Now that you mention it, I haven't had any nourishment in a while. I have had to stay highly mobile, and I've nearly run out of my personal rations.
The two of them sat down at the kitchen table. He watched with fascination as she reached into the cabinet and took out a bowl of frosted Lucky Charms and poured it into the bowl. Surely he'd had cereal before. Granted, she was a sugar addict, but still. She poured the milk in and then prepared her own bowl. He ate the cereal one bit at a time, methodically, whilst relishing each bite.
Thank you. That felt like part of a nutritiously balanced breakfast.
Michelle laughed.
What?
She shook her head. Nothing. Was that the first time you've had cereal?
No.
Then why did it fascinate you so much? He pointed to the box.
I've never had cereal hosted by a magical creature before.
Ha! He poured himself another bowl and enjoyed each bite with equal relish. He then proceeded with smaller bowls of Fruit Loops, Captain Crunch, and Fruity Pebbles. He ate each with the motions of a connoisseur of fine wines. He sloshed it a bit around in his mouth before he swallowed. Once he was done, he said,
Thank you for breakfast. I have decided to go and help your boyfriend.
Michelle blinked. Well, it's not that I'm not grateful, but I think Doc has questions that he wants to ask you. Shouldn't we be planning together?
Grenademan said, They are doing what I'd suggest to them. Unfortunately, I am no longer sure who to trust. A superhero trusts other people, but this world seems to be filled with people who don't know what they want, or how to tell good versus evil. All 4 citizens are important, but Oscar sounds like he will be the most vulnerable to Chaos's attacks. Therefore, I shall find Marv, and thus increase the odds of finding Oscar.
Michelle remembered what had happened last night. Grenademan seemed insane, but he'd managed to avoid the entire federal government for months, not to mention the fact that with Mulmo acting the way he was, just how effective were they going to be now anyway? What had started out as a good idea was rapidly going downhill. There were just too many people involved to make things effective. Well, I don't know the answer, but I do know I want Marv to be safe.
Very well, then, I must be off. Let the others know I was here. Tell them that I shall return once the day has passed. In the meantime, tell them to hold tight as much as they can.
He stood and moved toward the door. Michelle followed him and moved. As he walked out of the door, she spotted the truck across the street through the window. It started and drove around. She couldn't help but smile. She was fairly certain that they weren't going to catch him. Michelle found that she liked Grenademan.
This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. I'm Thomas Ricks. Music by Melanie Ricks. Voices by Skip Huffman and Josie Bergen-Lawson. Copyright 2015, Red Anvil Amalgamated, LLC. All products available on Amazon.com and other markets.
To fight the forces of evil!